Introverted feeling, Phi, the sacred compass. Expanded core definition. What is Phi really? Introverted feeling, Phi, is a judging function, which means it evaluates. But unlike Te, which evaluates external logic, results, or structure, Phi judges based on internal emotional truth. Phi is constantly asking, does this feel right? Is this authentic? Is this in alignment with who I am or who they are? Phi doesn't judge based on what should be done socially or what makes the most sense logically. It judges based on what feels real at a soul level. It seeks emotional congruence, moral integrity, and personal resonance. Phi is not about what everyone feels. It's about what I feel, and more importantly, what my feelings reveal about meaning, identity, and truth. Phi is a moral navigation system. Phi's job is to maintain an inner compass, not to please, not to control, not to perform, but to remain internally true to what matters most. This compass is self-generated. It doesn't check in with external authority or group norms. This is why Phi is fiercely independent and sometimes even quietly defiant. Phi types may bend socially, but never ethically. Even if they say yes with their voice, their gut will whisper no, and that whisper is sacred. The mechanics of Phi. Phi doesn't just feel randomly, it evaluates emotions as data. Its question isn't just, what am I feeling, but what does this feeling mean about my values or identity? Think of Phi as a highly calibrated inner emotional filtering system, constantly checking. Is this real? Is this kind? Does this align with who I am? What does this reveal about me/them/the situation? It also evaluates others in a subtle way, not to control them, like Faye might when unhealthy, but to intuitively assess their depth, congruence, and emotional realness. How Phi processes experience. Phi doesn't usually react instantly. It absorbs, reflects, and feels over time. A conversation might pass calmly in the moment, but the Phi user wakes up the next morning with a powerful emotional insight or a subtle boundary realization. Introverted processes internally before reacting. Delayed, sometimes slow burns, emotional reactions. Symbolic often attaches emotions to memories, art, or metaphor. Private shares only when trust is high and self-expression feels safe. Phi compared to other functions. Function evaluates. Uses style.
Phi.
Internal values. Personal resonance. Quiet, deep, precise. Fae. Group values. Relational feedback. Outward, attuned, harmonizing.
Te.
External logic. Efficiency, metrics. Direct, structured.
Tiistai.
Internal logic. Internal precision. Detached, analytical. Faye asks, how do we all feel? Phi asks, am I being true to myself? Te asks, what will work? Phi asks, what is right, not just effective? Emotional landscape of Phi. Rich. Every feeling carries history, value, story. Silent but strong. Often doesn't show emotions externally, but feels them intensely inside. Self-honoring. Will resist being emotionally manipulated. Empathic in a specific way. Doesn't absorb everyone's emotion, but feels deeply with people they resonate with. What Phi is always doing, subconsciously. Scanning every situation for truthfulness, integrity, and emotional depth. Forming an internal moral map. Evaluating people's emotional intentions, not just their behavior. Filtering self-expression to ensure it's emotionally congruent. Even their yes has to feel like a yes. If it doesn't, they'll either resist or quietly suffer and retreat. Real-world manifestation when healthy. Therapy and healing, deep ability to hold emotional space and insight for others. Artistic expression, raw, meaningful self-expression through writing, music, design, etc. Ethical living, aligning daily life with deeply held personal principles. Activism, standing up for the underdog, not for performance, but because it hurts too much not to. Metaphor. Phi is like a candle in a dark room, quiet, contained, and warm. It doesn't set the room ablaze, but it refuses to go out for the sake of others' comfort. And if that flame is disrespected or shamed, Phi will retreat and sometimes never fully return. Energetic vibe of introverted feeling. Phi. Subtitle: How Phi feels, moves, and expresses itself internally. The feeling tone of Phi from the inside. To have strong Phi is to live with a private but blazing hearth at your core, a sacred fire of emotion, ethics, and resonance. It may be quiet on the outside, but inside it is rich, layered, and constantly tuning into what feels real. Phi feels like a soft pulse behind the ribs, steady, deep, undeniable. The hush in a forest after something sacred just passed through. A chord in music that hits a memory you didn't know you were keeping. A fierce yes or an unspoken no that arises without explanation, but won't leave. Unlike Fei, which orients towards shared emotional dynamics, Phi references its own emotional compass. It doesn't ask what's socially appropriate, it asks, is this true to who I am? Phi is still, but never shallow. It is sensitive, but not fragile. Its strength comes from inner congruence, being able to stand inside your own values no matter who's watching. Energetic qualities of Phi. Internalized. Feelings are processed inwardly, often with little visible reaction. Deep-rooted. Emotions have long memory and symbolic weight. Selective expression. Will share only when it matters, and only with those who've earned trust. Integrity-driven. Emotions and choices must feel authentic or they feel wrong. Slow to warm, but fierce once lit, loyalty, love, and anger all run deep. Quiet judgment, constantly evaluating people and experiences for alignment, even silently. Typical expressions of Phi. Emotional filtering, disregarding advice or social feedback that doesn't match inner truth, even if well-meaning. Symbolic attachment, holding onto objects, art, places, or memories because of what they mean, not what they do. Silent rejection, withdrawing from relationships or situations without drama, simply because they violate internal ethics. Moral snap judgments, instantly liking or disliking someone based on subtle emotional cues or perceived realness. Private sentimentality, crying in secret over a song, a memory, or the kindness of someone who will never know. When Phi is in flow, you feel in alignment, no need to perform, prove, or justify. Emotions are processed cleanly, neither suppressed nor exaggerated. You express your feelings in raw, meaningful ways, through art, words, or quiet presence. Boundaries feel effortless. You know what's okay and what's not, and you uphold it without aggression. When Phi is blocked or distorted, you may become guarded or cold, cutting off feelings to stay safe. You might hold unspoken resentments that never get voiced. You could mistake being unchallenged for being authentic, hiding in comfort rather than growth. You may struggle to understand others' moral frameworks, assuming yours is universal. Inner world quote, imagined by Phi. I can't tell you why this matters. It just does. And if I betray that, I betray myself. Metaphor. Phi is a hidden flame in a forest shrine. It doesn't seek your gaze, but it will burn cleanly, quietly, and faithfully. Or it's a violin played alone in an empty room, not for applause, but because the melody needs to be expressed. Phi doesn't chase. It doesn't perform. It remembers what matters, even if no one else ever sees it. Cognitive roles of introverted feeling. Phi, by stack position subtitle, how Phi expresses itself as dominant, auxiliary, tertiary, and inferior. Phi as first function, the dominant, core compass. Role, moral core, emotional identity, self-truth filter. Energetic feel. Life is measured in emotional resonance and authenticity. Every choice must feel right to the soul. Behavioral patterns, deeply values-driven. Often quiet on the outside, intense on the inside. Can sense what's emotionally true before it's logically processed. Typical strengths: integrity, loyalty, emotional insight, protective instincts, authenticity. Risk/distortion, overpersonalization, reclusion, hypervigilance to emotional incongruence, inability to compromise when core values feel threatened. Types with dominant phi: INFP, ISFP, and phi-based soul stacks like phi, Na, phi, Ni. I must live in a way that feels right to me even if no one understands. Phi as second function, the auxiliary empathic anchor. Role: value guide in service of dominant perception or logic. Energetic feel, a steady emotional thread running beneath everything. Shapes decisions by aligning them with personal principles. Behavioral patterns, uses phi to filter what's worth pursuing, helping the dominant function stay aligned with inner truth. Typical strengths: careful judgment, ethical discernment, inner clarity, emotionally grounded decision-making. Risk/distortion may go along with a dominant function, e.g., Na or Te, until inner dissonance becomes too loud to ignore. Example pairings: Na, phi, inspired idealist, Ni, phi, symbolic moralist, Te, phi, efficient but principled builder. Let's explore ideas, but only the ones that feel emotionally aligned. Phi as third function, the tertiary, soul comfort/emotion loop. Role: self-soothing compass, emotionally indulgent retreat, boundary tester. Energetic feel, a warm inner room filled with feelings, values, and private moral insights, sometimes shared, often protected. Behavioral patterns, used for personal reassurance or emotional resonance rather than deep value exploration. Often under or overactivated. Typical strengths: sentimentality, emotional aesthetics, moral flavoring to logic or structure. Risk/distortion, conform loops with dominant introverted functions, e.g., T, phi, leading to internal echo chambers or rejection of outside input. Example pairings: Te, phi, righteous manager, T, phi, ethical rationalist, C, phi, nostalgic soul. I don't always talk about it, but this means a lot to me. I just know it. Phi as fourth function, the inferior, emotional awakener/shadow heart. Role: repressed emotional depth, underdeveloped value system, or hidden sensitivity. Energetic feel, both confusing and sacred. Often ignored, denied, or feared until life cracks open the heart. Behavioral patterns may suppress emotional needs in favor of logic or social alignment. Feelings appear suddenly, often overwhelming or shameful. Typical strengths: when integrated emotional honesty, empathy, personal conviction, vulnerability. Risk/distortion, emotional repression, explosive outbursts, people-pleasing, when paired with dominant phi, lack of self-boundaries.
Exemple pairins. Fetissi fitipes. Tenus fitipes.
I don't always know how to express my feelings, but they matter more than I thought. Summary: phi brings emotional honesty and ethical depth to any stack. As a dominant, it anchors identity in authenticity. As an auxiliary, it shapes emotionally aligned decisions. As a tertiary, it brings comfort or indulgence. As an inferior, it hides in shadow until it transforms you. Phi teaches us that truth is not just logical or social. It's felt, it's sacred, and it must be lived. Phi Strengths Profile Subtitle: The Powers of Introverted Feeling in Integrity, Emotion, and Inner Truth. Core Strengths of Phi. 1. Emotional integrity. Phi is fiercely aligned with inner truth. It does not pretend, perform, or conform for approval. It lives by a deep personal code that resonates inwardly. If I betray my feelings, I betray myself. 2. Authentic self-expression. Phi creates from within. Whether through art, words, action, or silence, it expresses what feels real, even if it breaks convention. 3. Moral clarity. Phi users often possess a deep sense of what is right or wrong, not imposed by society, but felt at the core. Their ethics are emotionally alive. 4. Emotional depth and subtlety. Phi perceives layers of feeling that many miss. It knows the nuance between grief and longing, love and admiration, rage and hurt. 5. Quiet empathy. Phi may not mirror others' feelings visibly, but it resonates deeply. It feels with others, often holding their pain silently and respectfully. 6. Fierce loyalty. Once Phi bonds with someone or something, it's often for life. Loyalty isn't a rule, it's a sacred tether born from emotional alignment. 7. Soul-centered creativity. Phi channels its inner world into art, healing, or expression. Its creativity often carries an emotional signature that is raw, powerful, and deeply human. 8. Value-based decision-making. Rather than chasing efficiency or popularity, Phi asks, does this feel right to me? It filters choices through meaning and alignment. 9. Protective courage. Phi may be soft in demeanor, but when someone it loves or values is threatened, it becomes a silent warrior. It will stand alone for what matters. 10. Emotional independence. Phi does not require validation to know what it feels. It can be misunderstood, even judged, and still hold fast to its emotional compass. Summary. Introverted feeling brings emotional authenticity and soul resonance to the world, grounding identity in what feels profoundly true, not just what is expected. Phi doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It simply knows. It is the soul listener, the truth holder, the quiet artist, and its strength is living in alignment, no matter the cost. Phi's Shadow and Distortions Profile. Subtitle: The Shadows of Introverted Feeling When Integrity Becomes Isolation. What happens when Phi distorts? Introverted feeling, Phi, is the soul's compass, a force of personal truth, value alignment, and emotional depth. But in shadow, Phi turns inward not for clarity, but for protection, becoming rigid, wounded, isolated, and emotionally impenetrable. Shadow Phi distorts not by losing emotion, but by clinging to it in ways that block connection, growth, and shared understanding. Core distortions of Phi. 1. Emotional absolutism. Shadow Phi sees its feelings as final truth. I feel it becomes it is. Others' perspectives are dismissed if they clash with personal emotional logic. If you don't understand why I'm hurt, then you're not safe. 2. Self-referential looping. Healthy Phi processes emotion inwardly. In shadow, it loops, ruminating on hurts, betrayals, or identity crises until the world outside fades. The same feeling gets revisited again and again, but never metabolized. 3. Identity overprotection. Shadow Phi guards its self-image so fiercely that it rejects feedback, avoids vulnerability, and refuses to admit when it's wrong. The ego becomes sacred territory, off-limits to even the kindest truth. 4. Martyrdom complex. Phi values authenticity, but when wounded, it romanticizes suffering. It may begin to need pain to validate meaning. If I'm hurting, I must be true. 5. Emotional gating. Shadow Phi withdraws under threat. Emotional sharing becomes selective or manipulative. If you don't already get me, I won't explain. Others are left guessing or excluded. 6. Judgmental idealism. Shadow Phi expects purity from itself or others. People are quickly categorized as real or fake, good or corrupt. There's little room for complexity or redemption. Shadow pairings and loops. Phi, Te loop. Te becomes the voice of judgment enforcing Phi's emotional narrative. Because I feel this way, I now must act. Leads to cold punishment, rigid boundaries, or harsh moralism. Phi, an I spiral. Internalized symbolism plus emotional pain equals romantic despair. May build entire identities around being misunderstood, fated to suffer, or sacrificial. Phi is the soul's compass, a force of personal truth, value alignment, and emotional depth. But in shadow, Phi turns inward not for clarity, but for protection, becoming rigid, wounded, isolated, and emotionally impenetrable. Phi, Naloop, escapes into imagined futures or fantasies of emotional resolution without taking real-world risks or responsibility. Everything stays internal or hypothetical. Fog, emotional signs of shadow Phi. You feel like no one really understands or can access the real you. You hold grudges under the name of boundaries. You feel unsafe sharing emotion unless someone already agrees with you. You secretly resent others for not feeling as deeply or purely. You equate being unseen with being morally superior. Healing and integration suggestions. Reconnect with Te, express values through action. Let conviction become contribution. Allow others to misunderstand you temporarily, and stay present anyway. Practice articulating your feelings without moral framing. I feel ____ versus this is wrong. Recognize that emotional authenticity does not require emotional perfection. Invite messy humanity into your value system, yours and others. Summary. Healthy Phi is a sacred fire of truth. Shadow Phi is a locked chamber, warm but unreachable. Its strength becomes distortion when emotion becomes law and identity becomes armor. Phi's healing begins when it risks connection, shares pain in dialogue, and lets authenticity include both flaw and forgiveness. You don't have to bleed to be real. Sometimes the truest thing is letting someone see you before you're ready. Phi Development Practices Subtitle: Cultivating Emotional Integrity, Inner Clarity, and Value-Aligned Action with Introverted Feeling. Why Phi Development Matters. Introverted feeling, Phi, is the compass of emotional truth, deeply personal, value-centered, and ethically nuanced. When underused, Phi becomes numb, disconnected, or overly influenced by external standards. When overused, it can spiral inward into emotional looping, rigidity, or martyrdom. Phi must be developed gently, through presence, permission, and honest expression. If Phi is underused, and you want to strengthen it, signs you're underusing Phi. You struggle to know what you truly feel or want. You prioritize external approval over inner truth. You feel emotionally flat or disconnected from yourself. Development practices. Feelings journaling, write and censored emotional responses to daily events. Not what should be felt, but what is. Begin with, right now I feel. Inner yes/no practice for small decisions, e.g., food, music, clothing. Pause and ask, do I want this? Build trust in your internal compass. Value mapping: create a list of your core values, not abstract ones like success, but felt truths like authenticity, compassion, freedom. Revisit and refine often. Truth-telling practice: say one authentic thing each day, kindly but honestly. Example: actually, that didn't feel good to me. Art as mirror: use poetry, music, or visual expression to explore and release emotions. Choose formats that feel private and non-performative. Emotion naming expansion: expand your vocabulary of feeling words. Practice distinguishing between similar emotions, hurt versus shame, frustration versus disappointment. If Phi is overused and you need to balance it. Signs of Phi overuse. You're overwhelmed by your own emotions or stories. You struggle to take external feedback or compromise. You isolate because no one gets you. Balancing practices. Te activation. Value into action. Translate feeling into a clear step. What do I want to do with this emotion or value? Turn passion into plans. Shared context practice: discuss values with others, not to defend them, but to explore overlap, nuance, and challenge. Let the external world refine your insights. Bounded sharing practice: expressing your feelings without fully identifying with them. This is something I feel versus this is who I am. Short-term action challenges: pick a project aligned with your values and finish it in a week. Build a bridge between emotional truth and external follow-through. Ritualize letting go when emotional loops get stuck. Create closure rituals. Write and burn a letter. Bury a stone. Wash your hands while naming what you're releasing. Balance compassion with boundaries. Notice where your empathy overrides your clarity. Ask, am I helping from overflow or from depletion? Advanced integration practices. Soul timeline. Chart emotionally significant moments across your life and notice patterns, awakenings, and values that endure. Inner monologue recording. Speak freely into a recorder for 10 minutes. Listen later with compassion as if it were someone you love. Ethical dilemmas practice. Reflect on complex moral questions and notice your instinctive responses. What does your inner voice prioritize? Mirror practice. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, "This is how I feel." And that matters. Stay with it. Summary. Healthy Phi is the quiet flame of soul alignment. Shadow Phi is a cave of locked emotion. Phi strengthens not by shouting, but by listening to the smallest truth again and again until it shapes how we live. Phi matures when authenticity moves into compassion and emotional resonance becomes ethical action. You don't need to explain your feelings. You just need to hear them long enough to become them.